Good evening. We're here for the annual meeting of the Jefferson County Genealogical Society and to celebrate 25 years of the organization. We'll start out by reading the minutes of the first meeting. October 18th, 1972. The first meeting of the Jefferson County Genealogical Society was held at the First National Bank Lounge on October 18th, 1972 with an attendance of 29. Hazel DeMaragine from Des Moines was the main speaker. Her topic, the basics of genealogy, encompassed the how, where, and what to look for in the researching of one's ancestors. Her talk was enriching and enlightening to everyone present. It was decided that there was a desire and a need for such a society, and that Mr. Charles Ruby would act as president pro tem. Mr. Ruby appointed Inez Smith as secretary pro tem. It was discussed and agreed that another meeting be held at the same place and time in November. There was discussion that a slate of officers be elected to carry out the duties of such an organization. Respectively, Inez Smith, Secretary Pro Tem. Now, Verda, would you? This is Verda Baird.
And you beginners all remember, we met on Saturday nights for probably 10, 12 years. I'm not quite sure how long. We had our 60 members, and I'll read off the names of these 60 charter members. There are at least 25 that are deceased. We have 8 charter members present tonight, and 6 of them, I believe, have belonged for 25 continuous years. Miles and Helen Bacon of Ottumwa, Verda Baird, Eva Bedford of Des Moines, Margaret Berg, Hilma Biddle, Arlene Blaine of Washington, Iowa, Jean Bonar, Donna and Ira Brown at that time from Birmingham, Lane and Jane Bush, Richard Carter, Ramona Clark, Stockport addresses, Roger and Rosalie Cochran, Harriet Conklin, Harriet DeHaan, Hazel Demerjean, who was the one that gave our first program that evening, Margaret Erickson, Don Fuqua, Ethel Green, a correspondent from Fresno, California, Pauline Harper, Leanne Harrison, a correspondent from Independence, Iowa, Nova Hendrickson of Keosauqua, Julius and Ruth Hillary, Hazel Hicks, Eugene and V. Casca, Donna Macy, Marjorie McCracken, Betty Mack, Mary Orban, Leela and Lester Pruitt, Mary and Orville Prill, Velma Pooter, Patricia Ramey of California, Ella Reeder, Edith Reniker, Maxine Riley, Charles and Karen Ruby, Iva Scheffel, Mila Sloan, Mrs. Ralph Sloat, Inez Smith, Helen Smith of Birmingham, Earl and Margaret Stinson, Ben and Lucille Taylor, Catherine Vinton, Sandy and Margaret Walter, Robert and Dolores Worley, and daughter Cindy Worley. Would those 8 that are present tonight stand up that were the charter members? This would be and of course the 6 then that have belonged for the 25 years as myself, Ben Taylor, Ramona Clark, B. Casca, Ruth and Julius Hillary. Did I get 6? I think we have something rather unusual. There are 3 of us in our bunch this year. All have a birthday on October the 11th. And 2 of our members have had state recognition for their volunteer work. Ramona Clark had it possibly about 1977, and I received the same recognition in 1995. This was at the state Iowa Genealogical Society programs. Scrapbooks, we have We started our scrapbooks the very first year, clipping marriages, marriage licenses, divorces, births, obituaries, and long-time weddings. And our first project was marriages 1880 to 1900. We had lots of workers, good volunteers back then. We wrote everything on 3x5 cards, copying at the courthouse. And we followed that with the birth records for the same time period, 1880, 1900, and then following that was the death records. But it wasn't like you do things now. Now you type one copy and quick run to the copy service and run off some more. Mary Prill and I, when we typed our books, we made the original and 4 carbons. She told me exactly what kind of paper to get, what kind of carbon paper to get. And the 5th copy did look nice, believe it or not. Then, of course, we followed up by going on past 1900, and we did the probates and the will indexes and naturalizations. Well, it could just go on and on. By 1981, you still really couldn't find a good place to Xerox anything, and I remember the first profit-sharing booklet we submitted to the state. I typed the original and 1 carbon. I still have the carbon in my home, but the original went to the state Iowa Genealogical Society. And in 16 years' time, from 1981 now to 1997, we have submitted 52 profit-sharing booklets. And the sales have totaled, just for our chapter, $10,702. It was in your little program booklet tonight. Our chapter gets 40% of that, so we have earned $4,280. Oh, but my goodness, what have you done with all that money? I'm sure you all wonder. Well, a lot of it has been photocopying after a good Xeroxing got started. I myself have typed 20 books, and I typed the later ones. I just typed 1 copy. We'd photocopy them. Binding has varied all the way from $8 to $12.50 per book, and so there's a considerable binding charges anyway. And we've bought memorial books for our deceased members that are in the Fairfield Library. We started our year this year with a balance of $484, and right today we have a balance of $538. The corresponding secretary has probably had the busiest little job. The first year in 1973, Mrs. Rediker answered 4 people. The most I answered in any one year was 181, but each one of them probably wrote twice. So let's say 360. So, well, we have a letter just about every day of the week. I briefly want to mention the very first letter I ever got that I answered in 1975 after our corresponding secretary moved to Texas. It was from a lady in California, and she wanted an obituary. But I wasn't quite prepared for what I found, because the lady out at Abington, Iowa, an elderly lady, had been murdered in her kitchen by her husband with a hatchet. And the very next day, he was committed to the Mount Pleasant. Last year, I met in person the lady. Just happened to be in the library the day when I was there, that I had written to back in 1975. Like 22 years later, she decided to come to Iowa. And it was kind of fun. I guess divorces have been probably one of the most interesting things. I know one man wished he had never asked me to look up the divorce. I won't repeat here in front of the group what it was all about, but he was disappointed he even found out why they were divorced. Probably the first one I looked up was the man that had gone to California with the gold rush, and he come home and found his wife with 2 babies that weren't his. And he said he would take her back if she would kill those 2 children, which she refused, and so they were divorced and he remarried. I've been able to put 2 adoptees in touch with their living aunt or uncle. And one just in the last 6 weeks, I didn't take her name when she left, but she turned around and wrote to me. She knew the surname of the people that she was born. And she said, what can I do next to learn who my father and mother's first names were? I said, let's get out the newspaper. And sure enough, we got out the newspaper, and there Richard so-and-so and wife were the parents of a daughter on such and such a date. She says, that's me. Well, she says, but how do I find Mom's first name? So we got out the hospital list, and there Betty so-and-so and daughter were admitted to the hospital. So there she had the names of her, she had the surname, but she didn't have Mom and Dad's name. And then I said, I think that your father is dead, and I found his obituary. It mentioned no wife, and it did not mention children. She wrote to thank me for my help and said that she had 2 brothers, and this was told to her then by her aunt and uncle that are still living here in Fairfield that she went to see before she left. And and she was told that she had a half-sister that just is practically a spitting image of her. They look so much alike. I helped a lady in England and asked her, well, have you found out anything about the internet, or have you ever any idea if you have the Latter-day Saints over here? She does, and she's off and running. Our society is now on the Iowa GenWeb. In other words, we're on the internet. We'll speak a little bit now about cemeteries. There are all kinds of cemeteries in the county, the poorest to the best. I've seen considerable work in Abington. Fiddler Cemetery was cleaned up in 1972 and again in 1992, and Wiley, or Pioneer Cemetery, in 1976, and again in 1996. Probably neither one had been treated with brush killer, and it grows back pretty fast. One has been completely destroyed by the county when they decided to straighten a road out in the country not too far from me in the last 4 or 5 years. Gallagher Cemetery was cleaned up in 1994, and I took a flip down that dirt road to see just here last week, well, is it grown back too? But no, it's nicely mowed. There are some of the bigger ones out in the country that I'll say they're in terrible shape, but you can't tell it when you go by them. I won't mention them by name right now, but I think the trustees in each township know which ones they are. I want to mention briefly Jack Porter and all his work that he's done. Working mostly single-handedly, he's cleaned up German Catholic Cemetery and the Courtney Cemetery and Bethesda Cemetery and Upper Richwood Cemetery, and then of course this year he tackled the Gilmer Cemetery, and this is the one that the 10 prisoners from over at the Mount Pleasant facility helped him with. And then he's working presently in the Mount Zion Cemetery. Did you have something you wanted to add right now, maybe?
Well, we're sorry that Jack and Bernice Porter cannot be here tonight, but we do have a certificate of appreciation that we're going to present to him from the society. So we'll give that to him our first chance.
Now I just want to briefly continue with the genealogy section at the library. We aren't very big, but we are mighty. And we have a lot of people that have written, that have visited here, and then I'll turn around and share things for our library. It more or less, I'll just say, it mans itself. When the library was in the planning stages, Jim Rubus asked me, what do you think we should do about the genealogy section? I said, leave it just like it is, out in the open where people can walk right in. And it has worked out great. I don't know that we would find volunteers that would come down to open up a room just so somebody could get in it to work a few hours and stay. And it's just, of course, helped a lot, since everything now in our new library has a magnetic tape on it that'll trip the buzzer as you go out the door. One of the things that I think is nice about our collection is Mary Prill did all her books in blue, and her first thing that she did from the courthouse then, she had it bound in red. So all our courthouse books are all bound in red then. When I collected family sheets, I thought, well, we better try another color. And so we have them in green books. In addition to that, we have a total of 6,114 family group sheets that are either in bound books or in the lateral file. We have 210 books, and I got another one in the mail today. This came from California, and it's on the Bray family, and it'll be in the library next week. The author was Vera Louise Ingham Anderson, and this is something else that'll be new in the library. This will be listed under our neighboring counties. This is all the cemeteries in Area 1, which are 10 counties in southeast Iowa. So if you're interested in a cemetery close by, this was donated by our area representative, Pat Carr from Ottumwa. Thank you, Pat. And this is what our cemetery books look like. We now have 24 years of obituary since 1973. I'll back up, 23 years. 1973 through 1996 are in bound books now. This has been an expensive project because we took our scrapbooks and we've made them so they fit on a page now. They're indexed also by maiden name, but each of these books, there's 5 of them, and they cost us about $80 by the time we got them bound, but I do think they're worth it. I think this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Pat, do you have some comments?
Not really. I just wanted to thank everyone for inviting me to help celebrate your 25th. And hopefully, I was going to say we'll see you another 25, but maybe I better cut it down and see you next year. Thank you for inviting me.
Charles Ruby, a charter member, has some comments. Would you like to come up, Charles?
First, I want to thank you for inviting me this evening, and I really owe that thanks in particular to Verda Baird. Being a poor reader of the newspaper, if this 25th anniversary meeting was in the ledger, it would have been skipped by me because I don't do too good a job reading the paper once in a while, and here of late I have really neglected papers. Thanks to my dad, he'll have them all still when someday, I guess this winter, that I'll go back and read them. So anyhow, thanks for inviting me, and thanks to you, Verda. For me, it was a privilege to be the president, or the first president, pro tem, and then to be the president of this organization 25 years ago. It's kind of hard to believe, to look back and think that, hey, 25 years has rolled by. As Verda kind of rolled the history here a little bit, a lot of memories came back to me, and I could agree with everything she said, or I probably would be able to correct her if maybe we were off a bit, but she's right on target. And I guess the two people that we should recognize and thank for getting this organization started here. I remember a Saturday afternoon, probably when I came in from my mom's farm or out to the farm, I guess, and helping my folks. Anyhow, Karen says, hey, Mary Prill called this afternoon and they want you to come over. They have something they want to talk to you about. And I thought to myself, who's Mary and Orville Prill? I knew Ron Prill, but I didn't know Mary and Orville Prill. Evidently, they knew me and thought I should get involved in doing something with them and organizing a chapter here. So anyhow, I was glad that when it all worked out that Mary and Orville singled me out, and therefore more people was brought into the group. And you know, there was Verda Baird, there was Lane and Jane Bush, and Julius and Hillary back there. As you read all the names right away to me, I thought, man, I recognize all those names. There was Catherine Vinton, I remember, and I don't know who else I've missed here, but anyhow, it was just kind of like rolling back 25 years as you read all those names. And so, but anyhow, Mary and Orville, you know, had done an extensive work, folks, and I don't need to tell you, you know, thanks to them, and now it's in good hands. I'm glad you have it, Verda. I always wondered just what would happen to the volume of stuff that Orville and Mary had put together, because as I chatted with Nelda Palmer and Ramona and Jean this evening as we ate, I knew one thing happened at Orville and Mary's. When a letter came to the house for an inquiry, if there was a new name in that letter, there was one thing that happened right away. Orville and Mary got out another 4x6 or 5x7, whichever them cards were, and made a new card. That happened instantly. We probably stopped reading the letter as I knew Orville and Mary, but maybe we finished the letter first. Anyhow, a new card was created and another card went in the file. And I think as Ramona said it there a while ago, I'll mention this. You know, Orville had all those documents microfilmed. And when that microfilm outfit that he called thought, this old guy's probably just got a few pieces of paper, but you know, we'll go down and we'll satisfy him, we'll copy his stuff. You know, when they walked in Orville's house, I'll bet you they just about fell over. Because I'll share something with you. Anytime I ever went over to Orville and Mary's, which there were numerous times after the first time that they told me that anyhow they thought that we should start a genealogy chapter in this community, and they wanted me to kind of help spearhead it along with their help. And I remember Julius and Ruth right in there along with everybody else, and pretty soon here comes Ramona and Verda, and it kind of goes on and on. But anyhow, I lost my chain of thought here right now. So.
You're in the house.
Okay, and thanks there, Frankie. Anyhow, there was one thing at Orville and Mary's you didn't get the privilege to do, but finally it took me quite a while, but I got there. If you went over to their house for something and they knew you was coming, Mary had the cards out of the file and downstairs. You never got upstairs to the gold mine. You never got up to the vault. No way. And I saw that happen. Once in a while, I just go over. Not tricking them, but I just go over. Because one day I went to a sale of my mom's, and I probably got the best document that I've ever acquired in genealogy for myself. I happen to own my great-grandfather's passport in the original document as he came to this country 150 years ago this summer. As my mother, I called her later on that day and told her what I had bought. She didn't even know that document was in that house, and she grew up there as a kid. from 1906 to 1941. She didn't know that document was in that house. It was folded. When you stretch it out, it's this long and that wide, 2 pages. It's folded down about like that by that. That's the way I found it. My wife's looking in this box and she says, there's a box we need to buy. She says there's some books of your grandma's in there and a few other things. But anyhow, she said there's something in there. She said, I kind of started to unfold it. She said I left it alone. So we just bought the box. I give $18 for the box. So anyhow, that evening I just takes that document over to Orville and Mary's. And anyhow, we looked at it. I didn't know what it was. It was written in German. It's all written in hard German. I took it to Des Moines to the Drake University and had it translated. Someday I'm going to have it framed, but anyhow, as you can see, I've kind of neglected things. Anyhow, as I got off the subject here, as I went over to Orville and Mary's, if you just popped in, Mary'd go upstairs and get the cards. Upstairs to the gold mine. But finally one day, I was over to see OP, and anyhow, he took me upstairs. So I finally did get upstairs, but it took me a long time to get upstairs at Orville.
I was up there 5 times.
You and I discussed that a few times as to when you ever got to the gold mine, and I told you one time that I got there, but I think you'd been there before me. Anyhow, I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you as to things that come back to me as I come here this evening, and it was a privilege to be the president the first year, and I'm not sure how long I was the president. I think maybe I was two years. Okay. Anyhow, it come a time that I said, hey, I've been the president 2 years. I've been long enough. And so I remember when Hazel Hicks was the membership chairman, nominating committee, she just begged me to be the president again. And I said, Hazel, I've been there once, but I said, it's time for somebody else to do it. Anyhow, folks, it's been great. You've had great growth. You've done a lot of hard work. Keep it up.
Charles, do you remember our cemetery trips?
Yes.
And when we went to Lockridge Cemetery and we had a picnic in the cemetery and the trains would go by and wave at, we'd wave at them. They probably wondered what kind of people those were.
There was a lot of things we've done in those first years. Anyhow, you just mentioned one more I hadn't even thought of.
And then probably some of our newer members probably haven't seen our charter, which was received from the State Society in March of 1973. So we'll pass it around. Maybe you'd like to look. Okay, we're ready for our program now. Connie Street with Wild and Wonderful West Virginia.